Kunkel here. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel and set the notification bell to all so that you won't miss any of my new content. On this episode of Global Topic, I have Mark Thomas and Corey Brown from Tnemic. Both Mark and Corey will be talking to me about the new NSF 600 health requirement and potable water linings. Welcome, Mark. Welcome, Corey.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, if you could take a second and explain your background or your role and also a little bit about Tnemic. I appreciate it.
Well, hi, Jim. I'm Corey Brown. I've been with Tnemic coming up on 25 years. I like to tell people this is kind of the company that I grew up in. And I currently oversee a lot of the operations side of the business right now. So manufacturing, distribution, things of that nature.
Good.
Jim, my name is Mark Thomas. I've been with Tnemic about 25 years. I'm the Vice President of Marketing, so I oversee marketing and also portions of our sales department and inside sales team.
Well, Mark and Corey, thank you very much for joining me today. For those that are watching this episode who might not know what the NSF International is, can you explain what NSF's mission is and the focus on public health standards that they do?
Sure, Jim, I can talk about that a little bit. NSF, those three letters, when the company was first started, stood for National Sanitation Foundation. The organization actually grew out of the University of Michigan. They had a public health school there that started in 1944. They now call themselves NSF International, because a lot of the work they do is applicable all over the world. They have authored over 80 public health standards. These sort of standards it's really no different than in the coatings industry. We use standardized tests written by ASTM, and companies like SSPC and NSF International use those standards to say, we want surface preparation or we want coatings that meet X, Y, or Z according to those standardized tests. I think it's pretty well understood that standardized tests are a way to make sure that various bodies are doing things the same way and getting similar results. Well, one of the public health standards that NSF is responsible for writing is called Standard 61. And Standard 61 governs anything in the United States or some of the other countries around the world that comes in contact with potable water that people drink and consume. So some of these things might include, plumbing components, even chemicals that are used to treat water, and then, of course, the one that we're here to talk about today would be potable water storage tank lining materials.
So, the new NSF 600 is upcoming in 2023 as a regulatory change, and it's going to affect the potable water industry. What's the history behind NSF 600?
Well, the labs that are allowed to run Standard 61 are accredited by an organization called ANSI. And ANSI accreditation just gives the lab the authority to properly run the standard and report the results of the standard. And the results of Standard 61 really have to do with what the water picks up from being in contact with what they're testing. So people submit their products, NSF runs it through Standard 61 testing, and then they test the water after the test to find out what's in the water and if the water is still safe for folks to drink. So there's a chart in Standard 61, and at the end of the test, they say, okay, based on the safety of the water at the current moment, this particular lining material can be used in a water tank of a certain size, right? And generally, the smaller the tank size, the better the test result. So you see a lot of high solids coatings that test really well and generally get pretty small tank sizes. And if you're dealing with a coating that has a little bit lower solids content and has more solvent in it, generally those tank sizes will be a little bit larger, according to Standard 61 test results. NSF 600 is really just a new set of limitations. It's a lower, what they call a maximum allowable level of solvent that can be in the water when the test concludes. They call that an MAL. And this new MAL set forth in NSF 600 affects 3 solvents that are really commonly used in the coatings industry. And those are xylene, toluene, and ethylbenzene, and it substantially reduces the amount of those solvents allowable.
Very interesting. So, now that we know, the history behind the development of NSF 600 standard, what regulatory changes are coming in 2023 that, water treatment owners and engineering firms that provide service to these owners really need to be aware of?
Well, Jim, the NSF 600 is going to drastically reduce 3 solvents that are commonly used in traditional high-performance coatings. It's toluene, xylene, and ethylbenzene. And so what we're going to see over the course of the next few years is a movement towards higher solids products, or 100% solids products, that do not contain any solvent. So there's no reason to rush out and change specifications now. We do have some time. But most coating manufacturers are going to have these 100% solids products. They typically are epoxies or aromatic urethanes. They've been on the market for several years. Tenimix offered those for 15 plus years and sold several 100,000 gallons of those. So the technology is not new, but it may be new to some of the owners or specifiers that are starting to consider these, because those will be the most likely to be NSF 600 compliant. So NSF 61 is not going away. The NSF 600 is being adopted. It's a complementary standard to NSF 61. So as owners and specifiers go forward with their projects and specifications going into January 1st, 2023, they'll want to make sure that their products are compliant, of course, with Standard 61, which is a given, but also to the new NSF 600. And Tenimic has been following this since 2018. This has been in the works for quite a while. And it's now time to start introducing this concept to owners and specifiers so they can get ready for it, prepare for it. And really, Tenimic is pretty well prepared for that. We've got our Series 22, which is an epoxy, our FC22, which is epoxy, both 100% solids, and our 406, which is an aromatic urethane, that are already Standard 61 or 600 compliant. So there's no reason to think that these are brand new technologies that you've really got to start being concerned about. They've been in the marketplace by most manufacturers for a couple of decades, really.
Well,
so what they'll need to start.
Go, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jim. So what they'll need to start doing is taking a look at their current specification to see what is being specified. Typically, for most of the country, I know the southeast of the United States, the Midwest, those are still going to be those traditional solvent-based products. The northeastern part of the United States, maybe the West Coast, and certainly Canada, a lot of those areas have already transitioned to these 100% solids products. So they just have to make sure that those have been officially certified compliant with NSF 600. But for those people that are using the traditional products that are more solvent-based, they'll need to get with their coatings manufacturer and review those and take a look at certain things. Of course, there's water tanks that immediately come to mind, but you also have pumps, pipes, valves, fittings. And for pipes, 100% solids isn't necessarily a huge challenge. As you get into some of these smaller components like pumps, valves, and fittings, you'll need to take a look to see, as Tenimic is anticipating, they'll have some other products that are a little easier to apply for those smaller components that will still be NSF 600 compliant.
So Mark, the coating industry has really seen a fair number of upcoming, regulations, at the beginning were deemed to be, immediately happening and very urgent, and being a major impact on our industry. For example, the VOC regulations come to mind. Why is this upcoming health regulation of the NSF 600 different?
Well, a lot of those VOC rules were federal regulations that appeared to be coming down. Coatings industry started getting prepared for those. They started educating their customer base, and then those were pulled back for various reasons. This is a different story in that the NSF 600 came through originally a Health Canada study, and there was a lot of toxicology review that precipitated its advance through the process to the point where it has been officially adopted as a complementary standard to NSF 61. So this is happening. January 1st, 2023 is the date that we're targeting when NSF is instituting that, and that is the testing body that Tnemic uses for its standard 61 coatings. So we do have some time to prepare for that. Like I said, the technology has been out there for a while, but it is happening. So we need to get together as coating manufacturers and owners and specifiers and just take a look at the current specifications, what's being currently used in those facilities, take a look to make sure if it's not currently NSF 600 compliant, that we make those changes so it is ready for that January 1st, 2023 date.
And I might add to that too, Jim. This is, as Mark said, a different process rather than a governmental body sitting back and making decisions where big business has a chance to lobby those who write the laws and the regulations. This is actually an industry-led effort to review this health study from Canada that Mark mentioned. And this committee that oversees Standard 61 is comprised of industry members. So they have reviewed the peer-reviewed health effects that were laid out in that standard. And they pushed back on those and they held the science up to the light to make sure there were no holes in it. And they saw that the health effects were real and that this was change that needed to be made. So again, Mark said these things have been voted on by the committee that oversees Standard 61. There was a period of time for industry to push back on the decision. That time period has passed, and now it's time for implementation. So NSF and the standard committee that's governing this decision has done a good job of providing us a long implementation period. Tnemic Company has been there all the way through the process, serving on the committee and being part of the process. So we've had plenty of time to prepare for this. We feel well prepared for these decisions, and we feel like we've got plenty of time now to educate owners on the decisions that are coming along and start to continue the conversation about where we go from here.
Jim, I've got something to add as well.
Go ahead.
Another consideration here as we're moving towards products that may be unfamiliar to some of the owners is the fact that these are higher solids products and they tend to have a higher film thickness in result. So a lot of times that'll be a one-coat application or maybe a zinc primer and a one-coat application of, say, an epoxy versus what traditionally has been done, which could be a prime coat, an intermediate, and a top coat. So you will have some labor savings there potentially. Depending on the product, but then also we feel like there's a net gain in performance because you're probably going to end up with overall a thicker coating film on the inside of your water tank, your pipes, your valves. And what we would advocate for is to take a look at the performance data and the case histories on those products that you're considering moving towards to be NSF 600 compliant. Take a look at that performance data. You can compare that side by side with the products you're very familiar with to make sure that the durability is there. And really, I think in general, we could say that that's going to be equivalent, if not better durability and longevity. And then also ask for case histories of where these have been in installations performing that are verified. Because like I said, there will be new technologies coming out. Tnemic will be introducing some of those as well in the near future. But a lot of these have been out for in the industry for a long time. There should be a nice body of case histories to go and help confirm the performance and longevity of those products that you might be unfamiliar with.
Very interesting. Mark and Corey, we've covered a lot of information and during this episode, and I really think there's a lot more here that needs to be unpacked. And I think the three of us are probably going to have additional conversations on this, related to the NSF 600. In closing out this episode, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would want to leave with the viewers of the episode?
Well, Jim, I would say that, again, we've got plenty of time to work towards this. This is the beginning of the industry educating their customer base. There are proven technologies, as I've mentioned several times during the podcast. So It's nothing to really be concerned about. It's just an evaluation of the products that you need to move towards to become compliant. There's plenty out there to choose from. I've also mentioned that Tenemic, I think, is well prepared for this, and we'll be introducing some additional technologies in the coming months. So really, I think the advice is get with your coatings manufacturer, review those specifications, what you've been using in your facilities, and start a plan to introduce those NSF 600 compliant products.
Yeah, Corey, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I guess I would just say that, we tried to address a lot of the concerns today kind of from an owner's standpoint. And Jim, you mentioned, maybe future opportunities, and I think we might have a lot to say to other folks in the industry. There may be some engineering concerns that we could address specifically more to that group. And then at the end of the day, we need to remember that there are applicators out there who have to adjust to these coatings as well. We know a lot about those things. We have a lot to say about those as well. So, maybe in upcoming episodes, we could address some of those concerns specifically and continue this education. We really appreciate it.
I definitely agree with that. So for the viewers of the episode, in the video description, I will have a link to Tenemic's NSF 600 Explained. It gives a lot of great additional information for you, and also related to contacts and things like that. Corey and Mark, I do appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, and I look forward to some follow-ups on this topic.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. Have a great day, both of you.
All right, you too.
You too. Bye-bye.